It doesn't surprise me at all that the Labour Party under Tony Blair, that the Labour Party in general, was prepared to consider breaking international law to sort out a rather modest version of the asylum problem in the in the last Labour government. And one of they had a brainstorming session in January 2003, chaired by Jonathan Powell, Mr. Blair's chief of staff, and they came up with a something that was, quote, worth looking at, a big bang solution to send a shock through the system. And this would be to remove illegal immigrants, regardless of the risk that they might suffer inhuman or degrading treatment. And their understanding of illegal immigrants would be those who had been rejected by the asylum system. And of those who had applied for asylum, only about 20% had actually been accepted. So that was quite a large number of people who had been rejected and who were resisting deportation, I think. And the advisors said that they would face challenges in the International Court, in the Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. And then, right, we would have 2 to 3 years in the meantime when we could send a strong message into the system about our tough new stance. This, of course, was completely rejected, as was rejected safe havens in third countries for failed asylum seekers. So their focus was on those asylum seekers who had come to the UK, had been rejected, and who couldn't be deported. And actually, that isn't a group that is even being mentioned today. It's quite interesting. But Tony Blair's people were using the term illegal migrants. Of course, this term changes its meaning. So when you see it, you shouldn't be leaping up and saying, "Ah, yes!" They were dealing with the same problem. They weren't. They were dealing with a different aspect of the same problem. But it is a problem. In 2002, there were 84,000 asylum applications in Britain, and, and of course, Tony Blair was also trying to produce its own version of a hostile environment to make the country look less attractive for asylum seekers. And he opines, why would asylum seekers come to Britain? Why do we need all this asylum law if they have to travel through a safe country like France? So again, he was grappling with the same rhetoric and the same ideas that are being considered today. And uh, he wanted a radical solution. No radical solution was possible. There's a paper called Asylum, the Nuclear Option. And as I say, they were brainstorming. They were also concerned about, quote, the NIMBY factor. The Australian approach of detaining people in camps could be an effective deterrent, and it had driven a number of the new applications, they said, from Australia to Britain. So the fact that Australia was closing the door meant that the door had to be opened in Britain. So the idea that Australia and Australians are saying, well, it works in Christmas Island, we've done it. Well, that means if Australia has done it, another country has to pick up the loss. And I find it quite entertaining and interesting that Blair's government, in their research papers, recognised that the Australian clampdown meant that there was more there was more of a refugee issue in Britain, and that the two things were linked. So the fact that Australia does something doesn't mean everybody else can follow suit. Australia can do things precisely because Australia isn't signed up to the 1951 Refugee Convention. That is the decisive issue. If Britain wishes to address this problem, either if Britain wished to address this problem in 2002 under Blair, or wishes to address this problem in 2023 under Sunak, then the way to do it is to convene an international conference and to question or to reframe the 1951 Refugee Convention. That is a starting point to have an international agreement. The next point is to start working out how that can be implemented on a national basis. And Poll apparently says, as an island, people who've come here by sea have, by definition, already passed through a safe country. Doesn't that sound familiar? And very few of those who apply at airports are genuine refugees. Ideally, we should not have an asylum hearing at all, simply a decision by an immigration officer to return someone, followed by a one-tier fast appeal against that decision, if that is necessary. Again, isn't that familiar? Goodness, this is so similar to the debate that we're having, says Dr. Peter Walsh of the Migration Observatory today. And so the idea that the migration problem that is being faced today is something new is absurd. Tony Blair in 2004 was having talks with Tanzania about a processing centre for Britain in Tanzania, not about keeping people permanently there, but actually about doing something not dissimilar to what Italy plans to do in Albania. Not dissimilar, I suspect, to what Sir Keir Starmer will propose when he gets into power next year. I think the Tanzanian solution, though not in Tanzania, I suspect it will be in Albania, will be the preferred solution in the Labour Party and will be the one that ends up as law. And I think the Rwanda scheme will be consigned to the dustbin of history where it rightly belongs, with the people who proposed it in the first place. And I suspect there will be I suspect there will be legal action against those people who were proposing it, with strong questions about whether or not people were feathering their own nest, or dealing with, quote, friends. And it's always interesting looking into the past to see how it links to the present, and it is fascinating to observe the very specific links here. We've got the additional problems of people risking their lives by travelling over the Channel, and that's simply a parallel to the way people are risking their lives travelling over the Mediterranean. This is a problem that needs to be dealt with internationally, globally.